you have a very particular place in the independent and American, not only American, but in the cinema. You have a trajectory very, more than original, because you had, for once, he adapted at some time to some conditions, and out of that you made very personal movies, and the other ones you were from the start, and they are as well very personal. And I'd like to ask you, I know that you said that you always preferred your last movie or the next one that is coming. But before talking about the next one, let's talk about your work and how do you manage to build such a career in a country that usually doesn't let this kind of careers exist.
Well, to quote, I always get confused at whether it's Bela Lugosi or Boris Karloff who says it, but build perhaps, career perhaps not. No, it's funny because for the last few years I've been teaching cinema, which is I get a lot of pleasure out of, and students today studying to be directors or cinematographers or whatever are very conscious of the idea of career. It's something that's instilled into them, and they think about the idea of building a career. Way back when, when we were fighting Indians and trying to make our way out west, we had no concept of career. It wasn't something that occurred to us. The only thing that I thought about was, is it possible that I could even begin to make a movie, let alone build a career?
Yeah, that's why you have that is this freedom that brings you to all these films, and that this freedom is because you never, I think, you always go step by step, and I'd like to ask you now that you are, when you teach to your students, how can we, in this moment, what you feel that now it's, you have more freedom to do the things now that you were 30 years ago, or for them it will be more difficult than it was at that time?
I think it's always difficult, but I want to say I've just had the pleasure of being on the jury for the mini festival of short student films, and I have to say that it gives me hope. When I see some of the films that the students of today are making, I really feel like there is a future of cinema.
You have to believe on that when you see Road to Nowhere, that is one of the most, original movies that I saw and important in the last months, and how it happens. It was something that you prepare for a long time. It's something that you could do it in a short time. Did you do it with how exactly how you are as well? When you do it, most of the time you are a producer as well in a way. I'd like to understand how this film happens and why.
It came about because of a I guess a decision to change the course of our lives, and I give most of the credit to my daughter, who she says that she was just bored seeing two-lane blacktop so many times at so many festivals, and that she absolutely insisted that I make another movie. And so, but really it was a decision that we were just going to make it no matter what, and we actually began pre-production before we had the money. And she was convinced, and because she was convinced, I was convinced. And we just began, and we raised, she raised some money, and we said, we're just going to start. Now, usually you can't do that. Usually you have to have all the money before you can begin to shoot one frame of film. But we said, well, if that's all we have, we're going to do it for that. And it turned out we couldn't quite make it for that, for what we had originally. And but we started shooting in North Carolina, and after 3 weeks, the plan was to continue in other locations. We were going to go to Europe, and I didn't know this, but we had run out of money, and but she had already bought the tickets, and so we got on a plane and we went to London, and then we went to Italy, and it was one step at a time, as you say, and she wouldn't give up, and she spared me the anxiety of knowing how difficult it was.
The scripts change with all this, or we kept completely, the script from.
The script changed, and it didn't change. We kept the script. We were forced to make some changes. There was originally the whole Cuban backstory that we gave up because, for two reasons. We didn't have enough money to shoot it, and we didn't have enough time. The picture was already enough. We had a movie already without it, and I think it's actually better as a result. But all the changes were small changes. The actors, because they needed to keep their performances alive, they would make little changes from one take to another, little tiny dialogue changes, but sometimes major things. Sometimes an actor would create something where there was something very minimal before. Keeping it minimal, they would add something that would change the whole direction of the movie. And this happened at the beginning, and it happened at the end. We had 2 scenes that were literally created by the actors, and I have to say that it was an experiment. I didn't create these scenes, but I tried to create an environment where people were free to create. And it wasn't just the actors, it was everybody else who was involved in the production. I tried to create an environment where everybody would shut down their brain and work completely from their instinct, from their subconscious, if you want to call it that. And for some reason it worked. I don't know why. I don't know why they had the faith in themselves, really, to do that, but they did, and it was a unique experience for everybody, for me, but for everybody else too.
And it was the first time that you worked like that?
It was the first time, yes.
All the other time you keep very close to the script from the beginning? Yes.
I mean, we had other movies where we made changes in the script as we went along, particularly in China 9, Liberty 37, but most of the movies were done with a consciousness, and this was without consciousness as much as we could.
I'd like to ask the audience to make some questions, because I think about the film or about any other film that you could see during the festival.
Hi, a basic question. What is the most basic thing about cinema that you transmit to your students? What is for you the
most basic thing? I think emotion. In fact, what I teach is motion pictures come from out of emotion, or out of motion. Emotion is out of motion.
Thank you.
Hello, can you tell us a little bit about chess and the presence it has in your cinema?
Chess?
Yes, please.
Uh, um, Chess is something that has interested me from the time that I was young, and my children caught that disease from me, and they began playing chess when they were young. But I put chess in my movies for the first time 6 years ago when I made Stanley's Girlfriend, which was a movie about Stanley Kubrick, who also played chess. And in Stanley's Girlfriend, we have a game where he's supposed to make his first mistake because he's fallen in love with this woman. And the game that we used for that scene was a classic game in chess history, and it actually occurred at about the same time as our movie, in the middle of the 1950s. It was one of the big mistakes in chess, and so we recreated that game and played that moment where the original player made this mistake. And then at the end of Stanley's Girlfriend, we have the same setup again, and Leo is still trying to solve the problem. And it's the same game that we play in Road to Nowhere.
When you worked with one of the best DPs mostly, and you are very concerned about to work with very, I don't know if they were known at the period you work with, but it's something that you are very concerned, and I think I read the text of Bill Crone saying that you prefer mostly natural light to work in an artificial elements.
Yes. I had the good luck to work with some wonderful cinematographers. One of the first was Gregory Sandor, who was Hungarian, but who spent most of his life before coming to America in Cuba, and he did the scenes that I did in The Terror, and he shot The Shooting and Ride in the Whirlwind and Two-Lane Blacktop, and he never, unlike the other Hungarians at that time, he was never able to get into the Cinematographers Union. He was promised that he would get in on Two-Lane Blacktop, and they changed their mind at the last time. So we had to give the director of cinematography, director of photography, credit to a union cameraman who basically just stayed in the hotel every day, never came on the set. And Gregory got credit as photographic consultant, I think. But he was a wonderful cinematographer. And then I worked with Nestor Almendros and Giuseppe Rotuno, and now my last 3 films I've done with Josep Civit.
And how you manage, and how you, in a way, accept to abandon the 35 and coming to the digital, because I think Road to Nowhere was made in a digital. No?
Yes. Well, I mean, from the photography, the lighting is not so different. I mean, it's possible because with digital cameras, you can shoot without lighting. You can just shoot what you find, and a lot of people find that appealing. I grew up in an age of classic movie lighting, and so we didn't change anything when we had the digital camera. We still lit it in the same way. There are problems. It's harder actually to light for digital, but it's becoming easier.
Any?
Good evening. Could you please tell us a bit more about your relation to the Western? Because I believe you've worked in different genres, but it seems to me that you've worked a few times in Westerns. So I'd like to hear your personal relation to the Western and what it means to you.
Well, I think my love of movies began with a kind of Western, with The Lone Ranger on Saturday afternoons, My Darling Clementine with Henry Fonda, and the other one that had an influence on us, well, there were two others, I guess, Shane, and also the one with Marlon Brando. I blanked out on the title, but you know, those were the ones that we went to for inspiration.
And one thing, you always were, I know that at the beginning you were working like with Roger Corman and everything, but after, for a moment, you accept projects already written and rewrote all of them, or in any of your films, you just film a script that came from anyone else?
Well, most of the things I did came from a script that was already existing, except for the shooting and Ride in the Whirlwind, which literally Roger Corman had agreed to make one picture that Jack Nicholson had written, and then he changed his mind, and what he said was, if you want, you can make a Western. And before we had finished the conversation, he said, well, as long as you're making one Western, you may as well make two, because you can almost do two for the price of one. And so with those, we literally started with blank pieces of paper. We had nothing to begin with. But all the other ones, I was given a script, and I don't know how, I think I should have been a politician and not a movie maker, because in every case, I somehow managed to get the producer to allow me to throw the script away and start from the beginning. But they began with a script, with somebody else's script.
Another thing, do you have any relations with other directors, any in the States? Do you feel close to any other director or anyone?
Well, somebody just asked me this question. It's I guess not so strange, but you meet everybody else who works in a movie when you make a movie, except other directors. But you do meet other directors at film festivals, and so I've met a lot of directors over the years at festivals. I've become friends with Wim Wenders and Werner Herzog, and Francis Coppola actually was one of the few that I met actually while being a director, because he was part of Roger Corman's stable, and so we didn't work exactly together, but we would pass each other, and we became friends.
And did you had to abandon a lot of projects that you'd like to do, or you could mostly arrive to do them?
Well, basically, I make a movie about every 10 to 20 years, so I would be really lazy if I did nothing between those pictures. I think that Brad Stevens, who did one of the books about my movies, compiled about 60 projects, of which I've made about a dozen. So what is that? One in five. That's a pretty good record, I guess. I think this, a lot of studios only make 1 in 10 pictures that they develop.
I've been following your retrospective, and I believe your films are very sensual. Is there anything about it in, I mean, directing actors, making a film? Is it something, there's a sensual quality or even erotic quality in it? Or what I'm saying is just rubbish?
It's a hard question. I think that something that I'm aware of, you know, during the process is that I really love actors, and so I have a lot of pleasure in the process because I enjoy them so much, and I think what the main role of a director in cinema, as opposed to a director in theater, is he has to replace the audience. The actors need someone to tell them when they're doing the thing that they should be doing, or whether they're going on the wrong road. And so what I do when I'm making a movie is I laugh a lot, I cry a lot, and you know, that somehow gets across to them.